Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for taking the time to join the webinar today. It's lovely to see so many of you online. I'm Francesca and I'm a regional advisor in the capability team here at Charity Services. And today we're going to provide an overview of the new officer definition for charities. So when the Charities Act changed last year, this was one of the new parts of the legislation that was amended. So we're going to look at what has changed, what the new requirement is and who it covers, what duties an officer needs to know about, your duties under other legislation, and where to find some help. And we know this might feel like a lot of information. Don't worry, we will provide you with a link to the slides and a list of helpful resources, and we'll email that to you. And so please don't email us and ask us for the link. We've got a bit of a backlog. We've done a few webinars and we've had our annual meeting. So we're busy transcribing all the webinars at the moment. So it would really help us if you don't email and ask, but we'll send it out in the beginning of December. And we held another webinar about the new governance requirement last week. So if you need some more information, you can find that webinar on our website in about a week or so. You can just type in webinars on our homepage in the search bar at the top. Before we begin properly, can you hear us okay? So make sure your computer is unmuted and check your internet if you're having trouble. We welcome your questions throughout the webinar and we have lots of time at the end to talk through them. So please use the Q&A box to ask questions. Please do not use the chat box. Even if I tell you to use the chat box, it's a Q&A box and that's where you pop your questions in. If we cut out, we will be in touch with you, but we've never cut out before, so I don't think it's going to happen, but just in case. We know there might be some new people on the webinar today. So to start, we're just going to play a short video and it talks about some of the responsibilities a new officer may have. So if you are new to a charity, this really helps to get an overview of what you are responsible for. And if you've got new people on your board, you can always play this at a board meeting. So it's in the list of resources that we send you and it's also on our website. So we'll play it now so you can have a look.
Congratulations, you are an officer of a registered charity. Being an officer is a big responsibility. In this video, I'll talk you through some of the information and resources that can help you be an effective officer for your charity. The Officer Kit available on Charities Services website is a good resource to start with. It covers the responsibilities of being an officer, answers some common questions, and recommends useful resources. As a new officer, you may be unclear about the structure or function of your charity. A good thing to do is to refer to your charity's rules document. Knowing your rules will help you understand the function and purpose of your charity. If you don't know where to find your charity's rules, you can read them on the Charities Register. You should also know what your legal obligations are. Charities come in all shapes and sizes, and different legislation can affect different organisations depending on their legal structure, their rules, the services they provide, and their funding. Therefore, it's important to know what your legal obligations are. For information on legal duties, take a look at the Legal Obligations page on Charities Services website and the Legal Handbook for Charities that's available through CommunityNet Aotearoa, an online hub of resources designed to strengthen communities. As an officer, it's your duty to make sure your charity has the right policies and procedures in place to manage risk, such as conflicts of interest, when a dispute happens, and health and safety. It is also important to make sure you keep accurate records of your charity's business, such as your charity meetings, your staff and volunteers, your charity's finances, and your charity's information. For more guidance, take a look at CommunityNet Aotearoa's policies, record keeping and financial management resources. One of the greatest challenges for any charity is planning for the future and being sustainable. New Zealand Navigator is an online self-assessment tool that helps to improve your charity's governance by identifying your strengths and the areas where you can improve. Once you complete an assessment, you will have immediate access to a report with feedback and an action plan to further develop your organisation. Every year, all registered charities must file an annual return along with a financial statement or performance report for charity services. There's lots of information and resources available on Charities Services website to help you report correctly, including templates, guides, and webinars. Sign up to Charities Services newsletter to receive future updates and news of interest to charities.
Awesome. Hope you enjoyed that lovely little video. It's a great video just to give you an idea of some of the obligations that you have. So the Charities Act was amended in 2023, and there is now a new definition of officer. So the definition of an officer under the Act is now wider than it has been, and it captures more than trustees in the case of charitable trusts. And for members of a committee or a board in the case of incorporated societies and companies. Regardless of the type of entity your charity is, your officers also now include any person who holds a position of significant influence over substantial decisions. Such positions could include a chief executive, a chief financial officer, or your general manager, and it may now include somebody else. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. This is the new section in the Charities Act. An officer is now defined as someone who is able to exercise significant influence over substantial decisions. And Clause 4.1b shows that it also includes a person who has the power to make a decision that the trustees would ordinarily make. And the last two clauses just say that anyone included or excluded by regulations is or isn't an officer, and most of us don't have to worry about that piece, but you can go back and read it if you want. So in the next few slides, we will just clarify for you who is an officer under the new legislation. So if you look down at the bottom right of the screen, you can see that the CEO and the CFO are now included as officers in the wider definition. So that's the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer, if you're a trust, are now included as officers. And this is because they will have significant influence over substantial decisions by the nature of their work. If you are in incorporated societies, your officers have not changed, as the law already included the CEO and the CFO as officers prior to the change. You may not have known about it. If you're an unincorporated society and you're not listed on the company's register, then if you have a CFO or a CEO or anyone in a position to significantly influence substantial decisions, they are officers. And you can see from the slide, if you're a company, that nothing has changed for companies. These people were included in the officer definition in the past, and they remain included. So you might be asking, what does it mean? Charities come in all shapes and sizes, and one size does not fit all. So the definition we've just discussed on the previous slide talks about significant influence over substantial decisions. So each charity will need to have a think for themselves to work out if someone has that significant influence, and then they need to think about it as over a substantial decision. And what might be a substantial decision for a very small charity may not be considered very substantial at all for a large charity. So suppose you are a very small charity and you want to buy a new vehicle to deliver kai to people in need, and you might have saved $30,000, but the purchase is going to use up most of the money in the bank account. So there's going to be little left for actual kai. Your funding isn't secure at the moment, so it might be a make or break decision for this organisation. No one else on the committee is very keen on buying a vehicle right now, but behind the scenes, the chairperson's partner is pushing her to get the charity to buy a vehicle as he has to share his car with the chairperson. Partner's really involved with the charity and often volunteers to drop off food, does the accounts, and audits the performance report. He's been on governance boards before, and he might just turn up at meetings to discuss the finances, even though he's not officially on the board. The partner in this example that we've made up could be in this new category because you could consider that they have significant influence and this is a substantial decision for this charity. So it's really worth having a discussion at your next meeting and thinking about whether there is anyone in your charity who might now need to be listed as an officer on the charities register. And I'm not sure if I told you before, but please keep popping your questions in the Q&A box. I'm sure I did, but we'll have lots of time to have a look at them. So the more questions, the merrier. We really like answering your questions, so keep putting them in, please. Your board or your committee are collectively responsible for ensuring your charity complies with the Charities Act and other legislation. So it's really good to be clear about what your duties are. And so we've made a little resource that we will send to you after the webinar, and it lists your duties as an officer of a registered charity. So let's just have a look at them. You need to be able to understand your rules and your role to be an effective officer. So your rules are usually a constitution or a trust deed. You need to know what your purposes are, the charitable purposes that you've been set up to do. And how your charity is going to achieve that purpose. And you can read your rules document if you haven't. It's on the charities register. You need to know your legal obligations. So charities have different obligations depending on their structure, their rules, their services they provide, their funding, whether they employ people or not. So it's very important that you know what your legal obligations are. And the resource that we'll send to you links out to some other things that you might need to go and have a look at. So when we're talking about the legal obligations, it links to community laws, community toolkit, and a legal handbook for charities. So when we do send the resource page, please have a look at it because it's really handy. And it's if you know these things, people on your board may not. So it's a good one to share as well. You need to be able to manage risks carefully. Looking after your finances is another important thing. So it's your duty to know that your charity's money is being used to advance your charitable purpose. So making sure you have some financial controls in place. You also need to keep good records. It's very important to keep records of your meetings, the money that comes in and out of your charity, what you spend, what you do, your volunteers. So there's a lot of record keeping involved in running a charity, and you'll be using those records to report at the end of the year. Another duty is to be strategic and sustainable. So one of the greatest challenges for any charity is planning for the future and achieving sustainable funding. And we know it's a tricky time right now. So there are tools to help you monitor your charity's governance. So we'll send a link when we send this out. Have a look at NZ Navigator. It's a great tool. Charities report annually. So that's another obligation that you're all collectively responsible if you sit on a board or a committee and you're an officer. So registered charities must file an annual return and either a performance report or financial statements. You must also update your details with us, and it's really essential that you keep them updated so we can stay in touch with you because we like to remind you to say you're due to file, and it's important that we have the right contact address. So that's a great thing to do from time to time to make sure we've got the right person's name and email address. and keep learning. For most charities, it is worth taking time to understand your duties and to learn how to improve your charity. And you're here to do that. So thank you for joining today. Today we've been mainly discussing the amendment to the officer definition under the Charities Act, but we wanted to let you know there are also some other specific duties under other legislation that you need to know about. And this isn't a complete list of all the legislation you may have duties under. This is just a few. So if you're a trustee of a trust, then the Trusts Act 2019 also applies. We've put some information about this in the resource sheet for you. If you're an incorporated society, then you need to know which act you're registered under and which one applies to your organisation right now. So if you haven't gone through the re-registration process with the incorporated societies, you are under the 1908 Act. If you have re-registered, you are now under the 2022 Act. And I can tell you those acts are very, very different, extremely different. So it's important you know which act you're registered under and you are fulfilling your obligations. If you didn't know there is a re-registration regime under the Incorporated Societies Act, there is, and you need to go and find out about it. You have until April 2026 to get your incorporated society re-registered if you haven't done that already. If your charity is a company, then you will need to understand your duties also under the Companies Act 1993. And if your charity is a marae, then you'll have responsibilities under Te Ture Whenua Māori Act 1993. And if you aren't incorporated and listed under any of the company's office registers, then you need to make sure you act with due diligence as your charity has less protection than any incorporated entity. And your officers could be liable if you are negligent. There's lots and lots of information on our website about your duty as an officer, and we've pulled together the resource sheet of links we will send to you. Check out our page, Charities Obligations Under the Law, if you don't want to wait that long until they're posted in December. And there's lots of great information on the websites listed on the screen. So we have some fabulous stuff, but Community Net Aotearoa is a great website to visit if you're new to the not-for-profit sector, and you can find guidance, resources, templates, and all kinds of things here. They also do some great board talks. No, sorry, that's Community Governance Aotearoa. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Community Governance Aotearoa works to improve not-for-profit governance too. They have some great resources as well. And they do the board talks. They have templates as well, lots of things. So go and check out their website. And if you want to learn some more about your duties and about governance in general, you could do the Tick for Governance course, and you can find out more about that on Community Networks Aotearoa's website. The Institute of Directors also runs governance courses. They have a not-for-profit hub of resources, so we're not resource scarce in New Zealand. We have lots, so please do not feel like you have to reinvent the wheel and write all your own templates and policies, because lots of these people have done that for you to make your job easier because they know you're all busy. So please go and have a look at those. I'm sorry, they've all got similar names: Community Net Aotearoa, Community Networks Aotearoa, Community Governance Aotearoa, and Institute of Directors, who are a little bit different, but they also do have some great resources for not-for-profits. We realise that if all this is new to you, you may need to ask some questions. So I'm hoping that you're popping your questions in as I'm speaking. My colleague Jordan is nodding in the background here. We are here to help you. So if you can email us at info@charities.gov.nz, or you can phone us on 0508 242 748. You can email or call us and let us know if you have a question that doesn't get answered today. It's really helpful if the questions you're putting in at the moment are quite general. If you have specific questions about your charities, those are the ones to email and phone in. Right, we're going to turn to your questions now and see what you've been asking. I'm just going to change the screen, so just bear with me for a second until I find the right screen and look at the questions. And either I talked very quickly or this webinar's just got shorter over time. It is the last one for the month, but we now have 40 minutes for your questions. So Peter Van Hout, kia ora Peter, hope you're well. He has asked, so what if charity services believe a person should be noted as an officer and the charity does not believe the person is an officer? Peter, we can't look into your charities, so we don't know, but you will know. And charity services, it's pretty difficult for us to know. So I think that it's a chat around the board table. And we did this webinar last week, and I said last week, I'm not going to tell anyone who should be an officer because I don't know, and I can't see your board table. And this is a conversation for you to have around your table. Most people will know who has significant influence over substantial decisions, and for lots of charities this is the way that they work. So it is kind of just keeping everything transparent, because we know that lots of managers do take a strategic role. So, have a think about it and have a chat around your board table. But I won't answer a question like that today and tell you exactly who should be, because it is a conversation for your governance board to have a chat. But thanks for asking, Peter. Dan has asked, when adding a CEO as an officer on the Charity Services site, should the effective date be when they were appointed CEO, when the Act was amended, or when the update to the site was made? That's a very good question, Dan, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I think when the Act was amended would be sufficient. Totally, you could use that. I think that prior, when they were appointed, if that's prior to the Act being amended, you don't need to bother. I can find out, but I mean, for anyone, that would be fine when the Act was amended. So that was 2023, October 2023. Patricia has asked, can you be an officer but not a trustee? I have been talking to our principal advisor about this morning, and he has been discussing this. So yes, you can be an officer but not a trustee as far as we're concerned. So you won't have the rights of a trustee, so you won't have voting rights. Good question, Patricia. Sue H has asked, as an incorporated society, would the manager be listed as an officer in the annual return even though they have no voting power in the Constitution? Yes, I think so. This is new to us too, so we're trying to nut this out as we go. So I think, yes, if your manager is listed as an officer on the website, have your officer listed in your annual return. Peter, thank you. Another question. So to avoid a CEO, CFO being defined, could a board decide on changing policies to exclude these people from making significant decisions? That's what we thought, Peter. So that is something that you could do. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but yes, I think that you could totally decide and make a policy that these people don't make significant decisions. But that may hold your charity up. So you might need to think whether it's worth doing that. Yeah, and is that more difficult for charities if CEOs can't make those significant decisions? But a good question and something to discuss around your board table. Tim has asked, what if an employee we think meets the definition of an officer refuses to be an officer? It's an interesting question, Tim, and I think the law says now that those people who have significant influence over substantial decisions are officers. And so so they are officers. I know. But, you could email me in that question, Tim, and we can have a further discussion and we can get you a better answer than that. Yeah, but that's my answer right now is that they are an officer because the law has changed. Ina has asked, similar to questions below, just clarifying there are no limitations of CEOs, management being an officer. They can vote. They have the same liability as well. So no, we don't believe that they can vote. They won't have the same liability. I would assume that is another thing we will need to test out. So Ina, would you be able to email us your question? I'll just write your name down, actually, just in case you don't, but we'll clarify that. Because I think what the Act is doing is trying to bring these people in, but they don't get to have a say on all the things in your charity. And if they don't get to vote, then they probably are not liable as well. I can't see how that liability could extend to them, but I am one person here, so email us. Johnny, transactions with trustees are disclosed in the accounts. Do transactions with other officers, CEO, need also to be disclosed now? Or are the reporting requirements for this still driven by XRB? So the reporting requirements are driven by XRB. Yes. So just as it was before. May has asked, if a person has been one who has had significant influence for many years for a charity is now identified as an officer of a charity, what date do you enter? So you can either enter the new date that they are now an officer if they've just joined, or if they've been around for a while, you can enter October 2023 when the law changed last year. Ian and Louisa ask, can a CEO who resigned come back on a trust and reclaim their position and also be the chairperson? You would need to look at your rules document for that one and see what that says. But a CEO is not usually the chairperson, so that seems a bit of an unusual situation. There is a lot of influence to be the chair and the chief executive officer, but I would check your rules document. Office manager, we have had an officer indicate he will not stand again at our upcoming AGM. Should we wait to update the register until after that date or remove him now? You can wait till after your AGM if he's still on till the AGM. Tim has asked, what if an employee we think meets the definition? No, we've answered that one. So I'm scrolling back up. We're running out of questions. We can end the webinar a little bit early, but we can keep answering these questions too. So if you keep popping them in, I can keep scrolling up and we can keep talking. But if I don't have any questions, I can't keep talking. So if you want to ask me any more things, please keep asking. Deborah's just asked, what is XRB? Thank you so much, because I forget sometimes that people don't know who XRB are. So they are the External Reporting Board, and they set accounting standards, not just for registered charities. They now set them for not-for-profits, so incorporated societies that aren't registered charities. And they set standards for accounting standards across New Zealand for all kinds of different types of entities. So it's the External Reporting Board, and sometimes people like me abbreviate it into XRB. So they write the accounting standards that charities need to use to report. Thank you for asking that question. Bruce has asked if sorry, I think I need a drink of water. 1 second. So Bruce, if a charity at a group level who's not a member of the charities board involved in normal operations has ultimate control to make a significant So a significant decision over very infrequent but material transactions, would that trustee still be classified as an officer of the charity? Bruce, please have a chat around your table. Your governing board will have a view on this. So you're saying that they have an ultimate control to make significant decisions over very infrequent but material transactions. So if you think about it, if it wasn't declared, what would people think? Have a chat at your board table and let me know. Lynn has asked, as a church and an incorporated society, the elders of the church have significant influence over the society, but they are not part of the society of the executive committee, and so they don't vote in executive meetings. They are not appointed by the society. Are they still considered to be officers? If they have significant influence and it is a substantial decision, and even if they're not part of the executive committee, they were already included, Lynn. So, I mean, we showed you that little table earlier on. So the law already includes them. I mean, what this change is making is getting incorporated societies in line, no, charitable trusts in line with incorporated societies and companies. So it applied to them anyway. They just didn't know about it. So they are officers. Nathalie, is it sufficient to list trustees on the charity services as trustees, or do we need to specify roles, etc., who the chair is? It will depend on your trust deed. Have a look at it and see what it says. You might just all be trustees, but you might have specific roles. So have a look and just mirror what your trust deed says. Good question. Marina, is there any time frame that we need to update our charities data to add a new officer? There isn't a time frame, but the law changed last year, and we're telling you now. So anytime soon, you usually have 3 months from a time there's a change, but since we're just telling you now, yeah, so any time that you can would be fantastic. Beth, when can we expect to get the transcripts of these webinars? We're transcribing 5 in an annual meeting at the moment, and our friend who does this, our colleague, is just about to go on leave, so we hope to get them all done by December. Peter, charities need to look at who is a related party under the specific tier they are reporting on and look at the transaction. No change to the related party transactions should be reported. The primary question, is the person a related party? The external reporting board have information on this. I have a document on that if it's helpful. So I think that's a statement, and I will just carry on. Thanks, Peter. Scrolling back up, a question from Luke. Is a person who has the right to appoint trustees an officer? So I would expect if they have the right to appoint trustees, they are probably a trustee themselves. So yes, they would be an officer. I am out of questions. So if you have any final questions, let's have a couple of minutes to pop them in the chat. And here they go. Well done. Thank you. Keep them coming because we can be here till 1 o'clock. We'll get kicked out of the room at 1. Alan, the Act does not state CEO and CFO, so people should not get hung up on these titles. The key is their influence, not what their title is. So the CFO might be called the treasurer in some societies and charities. That is absolutely true, Alan, and a very good point to make. Thank you very much. So it could be called the treasurer, could be the person that just does the books. The CEO could be the manager, it could be your coordinator. So those were just I actually pulled those tables from somewhere else. I didn't make those ones, but you're absolutely right. So these names are interchangeable and could mean the person who does your finances or the person who manages your charity. Thank you very much for clarifying. I love that when I forget to do something, one of you do, and that's the beauty of the community sector. Kelly, just to confirm that last item about persons entitled to appoint trustees being officers. What if the person's entitled to appoint trustees? What if the person's entitled to appoint trustees are the board of a related entity? Not sure how to answer that question. Can you email me that one? And maybe I'm just a bit brain dead. It shouldn't really matter. Gillian has said, if our accounts have been done by a part-time contractor, are they an officer too? So Gillian, the test is substantial, substantial. Well, I've said it about 70 billion times. Significant influence over substantial decisions. So significant influence, substantial decisions. Is your part-time contractor, do they have that? So that's the question to be asking. And a chat around your board table, because I can't tell if this part-time contractor has significant influence. Virginia, I am a financial administrator, but I do not have any significant influence over financial decisions. You wouldn't be considered an officer if you don't. So apply the test, think about it, and you'll know if you are, and you'll know if you're not, and your board will know. And asks, do the new officers need to attend board meetings? So no, they won't have voting rights. They're not a board member per se on your board. They are an officer for charity services on the register. And, I mean, we said before that it could include your treasurer or your manager. It could also include your pastor of your church or someone from your temple, someone from your marae. It's not cut and dry to just those two positions. So if you think a little bit wider, I mean, and the example we used was about a husband of a chairperson. So I'm saying to you, and Alan reminded us that it isn't just those two positions, it's wider. Anyone, significant influence, substantial decisions. Beth has asked, using your scenario, the influential partner, suppose the Incorporated Societies Committee is unwilling or is misled to accept the level of influence being exercised and to agree that she is an officer. What consequences flow from a perverse committee decision? Oh, that's an interesting question. And I'm not sure I can give you an answer. But it is now a legal requirement. And if your committee doesn't want to cooperate, then you can get in touch with us and we could possibly have a chat. But for most people, this isn't going to be a huge problem. I mean, what I see is that this actually reflects how charities run in reality. So we know, you do have the board, and sometimes you have some people who sit outside the board who might have some significant influence. And so what the law is saying now is you just need to list them on the charities register. So have a think. Barbara, at general meetings, all members vote on funding decisions. Should this just be the nominated officers voting? So it will depend, Barbara, on what your rules say. If your rules say that all members can vote on funding decisions, then that's what happens. If it just says the officers should vote, that is what should happen. And I think that for the new officer requirement, if you're adding a person and they are not on your organisation other than for this, but for this, then they probably shouldn't vote. If there is a charity which is a group consolidated and financials of the consolidated units are separate, own treasurers, are the officers still just at the group level? Yes. If your offices won't change if you're so whatever your offices are now, that won't change, you'll just add on. So your treasurers may or may not be in that mix. And your treasurers should be officers anyway. For most charities, it would be unusual for a treasurer to sit outside a charity. It's not something I've heard of. Brilliant. Any more questions? Very sunny day in Wellington, so I think that lots of people will be out in the sunshine. Beth. So what powers of investigation and scrutiny are available to charity services? Well, we have quite a few. Well, a few. We look into serious wrongdoing. That is kind of the base of our investigation. So that's what we look for. We don't look into governance of charities on the whole. It needs to reach a certain threshold. So we're not out looking for you. We have a very, very small team of investigators at Charity Services who are kept very, very busy from reports from the community about charities. We don't go out looking for charities to investigate. The work comes to us. But the threshold is high. It is serious wrongdoing. So I don't think anyone needs to worry unless they're involved with serious wrongdoing. We are not going to be coming out to investigate your officers to make sure you've added them. We expect that you will do this. Deborah, as soon as the new officers are identified, how should we update the website? Yeah, as soon as you have identified the new officer, at your next board meeting, have a chat and just update. Kelly has asked, would Charity Services recommend these matters be considered for inclusion in a charity's governing document when that cyclical review point comes around? That's a brilliant idea, Kelly. Brilliant idea. So Kelly is talking about the governance review that happens now every 3 years. And so that's, if you weren't part of the webinar we did last week, there is a new governance review that is now in legislation and charities, well, it's not in legislation actually, is it? Hang on. There is a new governance review. It's every 3 years. So that's a great time to think about who has significant influence. Well done, Kelly. Patricia asks, does an officer require specific appointment? I think for this extension, how the officer definition has widened, you just need to appoint them at a meeting and update the charities register. Peter, Francesca would like to have a chat about the Methodist Church and uniting parishes also sometime, and it's not urgent. I would love to have a chat to you, Peter. I'll arrange that with you. I know Peter from way back. Peter does lots of help for the Methodist Church with their annual accounts. I think we are going to leave it there. I'll give you. Oh, yep, we've got another question. We'll take a few more and then we'll close off for the afternoon if there aren't any more. I know, we're a small charitable trust. I'm the only paid part-time contractor, the CEO. I'm struggling to understand the difference between trustee and officer for our small entity. So I'm now an officer, but we've all been listed on the charity site to date. So I know if you're an officer already, then you don't need to worry about this. You're in the officer club. So and I'm sorry that everything is not the same. So a trustee and an officer, you're a trustee of a trust and an officer for charity services, and it would be great if the language was all the same. And I realise that might be some slight differences if you're an incorporated society and you're an officer under there. And so the language is a little bit different, but the duties and responsibilities are basically the same. So you are an officer and you don't need to worry if you are listed. So I'm just going to repeat, just for the people that may have joined from when I first said, we will send out the link to this recording and the resource sheet, and we will have the other webinar that we did, the governance review webinar as well. And we did another one with the External Reporting Board last week. So if you don't know that there are new reporting standards coming, please check them out. They are easier to apply, but there are some slight tweaks that you need to know about before you start reporting next year. So that webinar will be available too. They'll all be available in December because we're busy transcribing them at the moment. But please do not email, and we're a really tiny team, and we end up just getting stuck emailing you back. So thank you very, very much for joining today. Thank you very much for all the work you do in your communities. Please feel free to share the slides when you do get a link to them. Share the resources. We would love that. If you didn't have your question answered, please, you can email us info@charities.gov.nz, and we will answer your question if it's specific about your charity. Have a lovely day. I hope you get some sunshine. Ka kite anō. Ka kite anō. Thank you.